Today's video sponsor is Be Quiet and their brand new Pure Base 500DX case. This is their first ever case to focus on high airflow, as well as their first ever product to include ARGB LEDs. But as always with Be Quiet, the emphasis is on function rather than form. Though that's not to say the case doesn't look amazing, because it certainly does. Pre-installed are 3 Pure Wings 2 140mm fans, and on the side you get a nice tempered glass panel. There's also a USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type-C connector on the I/O panel, and ARGB LED lighting featured on the front and inside the case. It all comes together very nicely, as you can see, so for more information please check the link in the video description. Welcome back to Harbour Unboxed. It is social distancing Steve here, otherwise known as Monitor Steve. And it's time for part 1 of the April Q&A series, which we're actually getting in April, so go us. We don't usually pull that off, do we, Tim?
No, we are. The last couple of times there's been like a couple of parts in the month, maybe one part out of the month, but I think we're doing okay recently.
We're definitely getting at least part 1 in the month, so that's really all that matters.
Yep.
So we've achieved that. But as usual, we asked you guys for questions on the YouTube community tab, and we got a nice response, quite a lot of questions there. So we'll work through some of the more popular ones, some of the heavily upvoted ones, and yeah, that'll be part 1. So I think we should probably jump into that. What do you reckon, Tim?
Sounds good to me. Let's go. All right, question number 1. I'm not sure whether this was the most highly upvoted question since YouTube changed the way that they show the comments to us, which has been very well. Sometimes you can see heavily upvoted ones if you scroll down. It's been pretty annoying. YouTube does that sometimes. Anyway, this one was heavily upvoted. I think it was the first one that we saw anyway. I've read from AnandTech that one of the reasons why Intel has historically been good at gaming tasks is because the ring bus topology allows for uniform, low latency access to all cores in the chip. Zen 2, on the other hand, has to cross the I/O die just to access the core on a different CCX, even if they are within the same chiplet. Given that Zen 3 is rumored to move to 8 cores per CCX and eliminating the latency penalty of an I/O die round trip, do you think this will be enough to erode Intel's architectural advantage in gaming? Probably one for you, Steve, given you've been testing all this latency stuff.
Yeah, so first of all, we do agree with what you've read there at AnandTech. We've said pretty much all the same things multiple times now since we first started testing the original Zen processors. So yeah, latency sensitive games are in particular 8 cores per CCX. Will that help? It'll definitely help with core-to-core communication for games, obviously, that use more than 4 cores. But that alone, I don't know if it'll make up the entire deficit to Intel in gaming. It'll certainly help, but I think my theory is probably the biggest contributor here is DRAM memory latency, because in our 4 gigahertz clock-for-clock IPC testing, where we compared Zen 2 8-core processor against an 8-core Coffee Lake processor, I think it was something like Intel had a 50% performance advantage in memory latency, so system memory, RAM, DRAM. So again, that 8 cores per CCX alone probably won't make up the entire difference, but we don't know what else they've done to improve DRAM latency, because they made those sort of improvements with Zen Plus over Zen. I can't remember the exact figures. It was like around 15%, I think, improvement in DRAM latency. So if they make a jump like that again, plus all the other little tweaks and things they've managed to refine, then sure, we are expecting them, based on the, let's say, the IPC gains that we're expecting, them to at least match Intel, let's say, in games. But all speculation at this point. We have to wait and test them later in the year. I mean, yeah, it'd be DRAM latency that I'd be looking out for to really make up that difference. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think if they can join the cache entirely across all 8 cores, that could have a performance benefit as well. But I agree. I think most of it will come with any improvements they can make to the DRAM side of things. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes and sort of whether they can catch up in some of those latencies, or at least they might not necessarily have to catch up, but at least improve it enough to match Intel in terms of overall performance.
Yeah, I think to this question, sort of giving some real world evidence and examples, is we've seen tests where we've sort of localized to the sort of same CCX, so the 4 cores there, and hasn't seen a big difference in performance. I mean, we're going to get a really good example of that soon with But when you overclock the Infinity Fabric, when you tune the memory timings, that's when you see really big performance gains with any Zen processor, really. And that certainly applies to Zen 2. So again, I think it's the DRAM latency that really needs to be improved to boost the gaming performance up to Intel and beyond. All right, next question here. Is it worth paying a premium for motherboards, or should we just go for good enough ones, like good VRM, but that's it? So I think we're pretty much, well, let's make this about motherboard VRMs. Is it worth paying a premium for motherboard VRMs? Because I think that's mostly what we're getting at here. But as an example, X570 motherboards really worth it over B450 motherboards, I suppose, looking at the MSI one. So let's say the B450 Tomahawk versus the X570 Tomahawk, which we've just got a look at. So focusing on things like VRMs, well, I guess it depends on what you're wanting to do, what you want to get out of the motherboard, how long you want to have it for. The B450 versus X570 one, there's a few other things outside of just VRM performance there, and you're paying almost twice the price for the X570 Tomahawk over the B450 Tomahawk. So again, you've got do you want PCIe 4.0? Is that going to be useful to you in the next year or so? So they're all things you have to work out there. As for paying for a premium for a VRM, so let's say MSI discount the gaming edge quite heavily by $30-$40 compared to the X570 Tomahawk. Would it be worth paying for the X570 Tomahawk? Well, it would be if you want to upgrade to a Ryzen 9 processor in the future. So whether it's when they get a lot cheaper on the second-hand market, or maybe there's a Zen 3 processor that'll have a higher TDP, well, certainly higher than 65 watts anyway. So you've really got to work that out. It's hard to say whether everyone should absolutely buy a premium board for the better quality VRM, because if they're gaming or they don't necessarily stress the VRM, then it would be a waste of money. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Tim? You got anything to add to that one?
Yeah, I think, especially with the super high-end boards, a lot of the times they've really just designed those for like pro overclockers and that sort of thing, going really overkill with a lot of those components. So if you're tossing up between like your sort of more your Tomahawk style board or right up at the top end with like Godlikes and all that sort of thing, generally don't think it's worth it unless you're in that specific market. But yeah, I think it's definitely worth getting at least something that is going to allow you to upgrade your processor in the future, not just to products that we have now, but also what's coming in the next generation as well. But a lot of the time, if you're going for something that's just good enough, then you'll be getting that.
Yeah, I think this question sort of comes up and there's a bit of confusion around this, because we'll say something like the X570 Gaming Edge is a crap board and you should avoid it, and the competitor boards from Asus and Gigabyte, namely, are much better. And then people are like, but the B450 Tomahawk was a board you recommended. That's quite good, and is that really much better or similar to the Gaming Edge? And the difference there is you're comparing what was a $210 board when we tested it to like $110 board. So when you're paying $100 or thereabouts for a motherboard, if it runs a bit hot, or you have to, improve the cooling, make sure that the heat sinks are getting plenty of airflow, if you have to sort of do those things on a $100 board when using a really expensive CPU that you've maybe got secondhand in the future, not such a big deal. But when you're buying a brand new motherboard with the latest and greatest chipset for still quite a reasonable price, $200, I mean, we've just got an example of what they can do at that price point with the Tomahawk. So when you've got $200 to spend on a motherboard and you're getting one that with a 3900X can potentially run up over 100 degrees, where the competing boards run at around 60 to 70, maybe up to 80, that's a pretty big difference. So if you're not getting any extra features for the same price, why are you buying a board that runs so much hotter? So that's the point of the VRM testing, is to compare boards at a similar price point. And then if you're tossing up between the Asus TUF and the Gaming Edge, similar features, you don't really know which way to go, but one has a substantially better quality VRM, which you cannot upgrade. To me, that seems like useful information, and you would obviously buy the Asus board based on that information. And that's why we focused on VRM testing and not things like testing audio, for example. Because in the case with audio, all of the boards, they're generally all okay with audio. And if you really care about audio, if that's a focus for you, you're probably not going to use the integrated audio anyway. You'll upgrade to a discrete sound card, and you can do that because they have PCI Express expansion slots, or you can do it via USB. So there are ways to upgrade that. If you get a board with a crappy VRM, and that becomes a problem for you down the track, you need to buy a new motherboard. So, yeah, I mean, worth paying a premium. Depends on how much the premium is. $700, probably not worth getting the $700 boards. You get them for all the overkill and unnecessary features, or because you have $700 burning a hole in your wallet and you need to get rid of it. But yeah, that's that one there, really. I don't think there's too much more to add to that, really. This stuff was also explained in the X570 VRM video that talked about the gaming edge. And I sort of touched on it again in the Tomahawk video, saying that the boards that are running under 90 degrees in that test are all A-OK, so there's no reason not to buy them. So yeah, anything else you want to add to that one, Tim?
No, I think that's pretty good coverage of that one.
All right, question here for Mr. News Corner, Mr. Speculations, and that's what are your expectations on Ampere? What do you think they'll show off on the 14th of May? What will you be covering in News Corner that week, Tim?
Oh, I don't know whether I'll even cover this at all, to be honest, because it's going to be workstation products, workstation data center stuff. I mean, it seems like there's a few people that, well, a lot of people actually, that expect this to be a gaming product launch, because they're sort of thinking, oh, it's been 18 months since the first RTX products, Ampere, oh, it sounds like a new architecture. But if you click through to actually read NVIDIA's sort of little blurb that they've got for what they'll be showing off on May 14th, it's all the talk is data center, AI, workstation, that sort of thing, which to me is not a very interesting sort of category. I don't really care too much about data center GPUs or anything like that. Maybe the architecture will be interesting to see a few things, how much they show off, who knows. But yeah, I'm more interested in the gaming architecture, which sounds like it's still quite a way away. So yeah, what are my expectations? I'd expect, data center stuff. I mean, we're talking about probably the successor to Volta, really, not necessarily the successor to Turing. So, we'll be getting a card with a lot of like FP64 performance and probably some massive VRAM allocation, like 32, 64 gig. Who knows what they're going to do on that? But that's the sort of stuff I'd be expecting. And yeah, I'm sure Gamers Nexus will buy one and put it through some gaming benchmarks. They tend to do that sort of thing. But yeah, if you're expecting gaming stuff, I'd probably be waiting more till end of this year, next year. We'll see.
Okay, next question here. Looks like one for Tim. Tom asks, how does backlight strobing affect image quality? I noticed that a lot of monitors seem to have it as an option toggle. So what, if any, are the advantages of using it? Does it affect brightness, color performance, input latency, or anything like that? What do you reckon, Tim?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because personally, it's not a feature I use because of the disadvantages. So there's definitely a few of them. Does it affect brightness? Yes, especially it does depend on the maximum brightness of your monitor. So the brighter that it can do outside of backlight strobing, the brighter it will be in backlight strobing, but with a significant reduction. So I think the best monitors these days can do like a little bit over 200 nits while backlight strobing, and maybe they'll do over 400 nits natively. So if you're in like a really bright environment, then perhaps that's not bright enough for you. So that could be a disadvantage. It doesn't really affect things like color performance, latency. As far as I've tested it, it's fairly similar to the standard modes. But the thing that I find the most noticeable, there's a few issues. I guess first is that most monitors only allow you to do it at a fixed refresh rate. So unless you get the current generation of ASUS ones, you're stuck at running it at 120 or 144 hertz with no adaptive sync, which can make some games not feel as smooth, potentially, if you're running a little bit below that, which makes it not quite as useful in a lot of situations. You also often need to have the game running at that refresh rate, so it's not good enough to just be running at 120 hertz. You also have to make sure your game is running at 120 FPS, or it can introduce some visual artifacts. And then on top of that, a lot of the modes you might have seen from the reviews, you'll see like double images appearing on the screen. Sometimes it's worse at the top of the screen than the middle of the screen. And that can create all sorts of annoyances depending on the game you're playing. And that can be worse at different refresh rates and at different frame rates of the game. So when you have sort of all those things battling each other in terms of, it's quite difficult to get that nice crisp image from a backlight strobing mode. There's a lot of reason not to use it. And that's personally why I don't use it. I find some of those artifacts to just be a bit too noticeable and a bit too problematic. Obviously, the best monitors out there do a really good job of all of this, so you won't have any issues running it at high refresh rates. It'll look great. There'll be no double images, and then there's not too many disadvantages. But a lot of the time, it's kind of like a trade-off with a lot of things. That's why it's an optional feature. You're turning on something to gain clarity for images, but you're losing a bit in other areas. So until we get like really high refresh, good quality panels that can do it perfectly, I think for a lot of people, it's more of an optional, see where it's useful, see where it's not useful sort of feature.
Another question here for young Tim. I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a question we get quite often.
A few times.
Both parts of this. So anyway, the question is, when will we see OLED monitors be a thing? And do you think next-gen GPUs will have HDMI 2.1?
So I think, starting with OLED monitors, it is a thing, but in a very niche capacity at the moment. There's like a few monitors out there. I don't think it'll become too much of a significant thing right now, especially when most of the OLED technology seems to be the big TVs or small smartphones. I think, especially with some of the image retention issues with OLEDs, probably never going to be like a major product category, at least until they solve some of those issues. As for HDMI 2.1, I think I would expect next-gen GPUs to have it. It'd be pretty weird for like a full, considering both AMD and NVIDIA seem to be doing a pretty significant architectural refresh. It'd be pretty strange not to include HDMI 2.1 with such a major overhaul. So I think both of those will include it, especially because a lot of TVs and stuff will start using it. So yeah, I think that will become a feature. Of all the components that make up personal computing, i.e. desktops, laptops, PC, Mac, peripherals, even desks and chairs, what do you think is in the most need of innovation, and what kind of innovation would you like to see? So I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier, and it's kind of hard to say like a specific category that needs like a major innovative overhaul, because a lot of stuff it's kind of fine. Like a keyboard and mouse, for example, it's kind of like that. It is what it is. Like I don't want a different form factor keyboard or a different form factor mouse.
I agree. And then people talk about the ATX form factor being old and inefficient and whatever. And it's like, yeah, I guess some sort of updated form factor would be good, but then you end up with like the reason we've had it for so long is because of compatibility reasons. Like once they change that, then you need to get the new form factor cases and then the new form factor motherboards and the other components that go along with that, and it just creates this whole new ecosystem that's completely incompatible. I don't know, so that's a bit confusing. And then things like just little things that would help refine the build process, but then I'm not sure it's a good idea, like front panel. Like when you build a computer, it's all pretty easy these days. You can slap them together pretty quickly. But then stuff like front panel connectors, people have to get the manual out, work out. Most of the motherboards are the same, so I can pretty much do it now without really looking it up. But there's about, depending on the case, there can be like 4 or 5 different little connectors you have to put in. So having, I think Asus made like a one type connector thing that you could plug into that first and pop it in real quick, which was cool. Having a unified thing for cases would be good, but then some cases may not want to offer certain features and whatever, and then it's not really that personal computing custom thing. So when you want to make things customizable and have lots of different options, that's where it gets complicated. And that's why we have some of the things we have now that seem a bit more, cumbersome than they would be otherwise.
I think even with motherboards though, like while there's been not much innovation for ATX motherboards, there's been many different form factors targeting things that I think kind of that's what you would do with a new motherboard form factors. Make it more compact, make it smaller. And we've already got stuff like ITX as a form factor that already covers that. So I think, with a lot of this innovation stuff, it's more just there's a lot of small things that could be changed, but I don't think there's necessarily like a major innovative overhaul that needs to happen, really. I think companies always try stuff, but how successful are they is another question. I think if anything, it's almost what we've talked about a few times before with these sort of questions. It's really on the software side to really, like there's a lot of innovation that could happen on that front in terms of using hardware better, being more efficient, all that sort of thing. Whereas on the hardware side, it seems like a lot of the stuff's they've kind of got into a good format and they're just, iterating on that. And that seems to be quite successful, which is, if there was an awesome new keyboard or something design that some people could come up with, then they probably already would have at this point. The keyboard's been around for a long time. So, yeah.
I was just reading this question again, though, but what about Mac innovations, Tim? You're our resident Mac expert.
Am I a Mac expert? I'm not sure I know too much about Macs. Can they innovate by putting Windows on it? That'd be nice. Have I just triggered some fanboys? I don't think we get Mac fanboys in the channel, so I think we're okay.
I seriously doubt it. That's probably the only type of fanboy we don't get.
Yep.
Here we go, Tim. Here we go. As our resident Mac expert, this question will be perfect for you. It's amazing that this is the next question, actually, but that's the order they're in. Thoughts on the basically confirmed rumors about Apple putting custom ARM processors in their MacBooks in 2021 and what implications this might have for other fields. So, Tim, go.
Resident Mac expert. This is something that I think I've been discussing a little bit in our Discord community recently, is about ARM processors. I mean, again, it's so hard to say because it's kind of like entirely new thing. I mean, I guess it's been around a little bit on the desktop, but what I'm really interested to see is, we've got ARM as sort of a low power, simple, efficient design, and they're trying to basically bring it up to be a more power, well, not power hungry, but sort of they want it to consume more power and do more stuff. And on the other end of the scale, you have sort of x86, which is your big, powerful chip. It's designed to be run at like 40, 60, 100 watts or whatever. It's got a lot of instruction sets in it. It can do lots of things, and Intel and AMD, they're trying to bring it down in power. So it'll be interesting to see, when Apple goes with, let's bring our low power design to use more power, whether that will be better than a company like Intel, for example, with, say, a Lakefield design, taking a high power design, trying to make it lower power. And we're going to have that battle quite soon of, Apple's going to take one approach. I think Windows will take a different approach. Who knows what's going to happen there? If Apple thinks that it's good, it might be good, but how will that play out with things like video rendering? That if you try video render not using the video decoding or encoding block on an ARM processor, it's really slow. Especially through if we're talking emulation, that's another layer of slowness that people probably won't be putting up with too well. So yeah, it's interesting times ahead on that one. I think it could either be pretty decent, or it will really disappoint people when they realize that they have to emulate all their favorite software and it runs really slow and isn't nearly as good as they think. So we'll see where that one heads. It's definitely interesting though.
Could end up being a bit of an apples to oranges comparison, Tim.
Well, I bet you're really waiting to get that one in. You're happy with yourself?
Like 2 minutes ago. I waited so patiently.
So, after 6 years being a carer for a terminally ill parent and having a GTX 970, I bought an RX 5700 XT. Should I wait for PCIe 4.0 support from B550 boards and the new Ryzen CPUs, or go for a 3600 with the Tomahawk Max? Money is important to me and I want longevity.
Tough one. Prices at the moment aren't good, a full stop, but okay, let's address a few things. So PCIe 4.0 support for a 5700 XT, I think it makes absolutely it certainly makes no difference right now. I don't think it's going to make any difference in the future either. So I don't think that should be a consideration. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's more an SSD type thing. If you want high performance storage, GPUs maybe in a few generations, but yeah, not right now.
If the 5700 XT was like 4 times faster, it may be a consideration, but certainly not at the level of performance it puts out at the moment. And we did extensive testing with like a GTX 1080 Ti, which is a little bit faster than the 5700 XT, and the extra bandwidth there didn't make much or any difference. Support. So B550 boards, they're going to support, by the sounds of it, PCIe 4.0. I don't know if that's a chipset thing or they're just using the PCIe 4.0 lanes from the CPU. That's probably more likely. And then the 3600, that's a great value CPU at a good price now. That with the Tomahawk Max, I mean, you're going to struggle to beat that in terms of value and wanting longevity, wanting to use it for many years. A B550 board's not really going to see you last long. As for the new Ryzen CPUs, you're looking at much later in the year for that. So I think buying right now, if you can get all those parts at a reasonable price, would probably be the way to go. Do you agree, Tim?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think B550, we're still looking at 2 months away. I think it's coming out in June, and then as you say, the Ryzen CPUs is kind of probably a 6-month wait. So if you're talking that sort of time frame, that's 6 months that you could have your Ryzen 3600 right now and be enjoying it. So I think that tends to be how I would go right now. I mean, I don't think this commenter mentioned what CPU they were upgrading from, so that could sway into it a little bit. But I think generally speaking, that would be the way to go.
I'll start by I'll address this one to you, Tim, because I'm interested to hear what you have to say. When do you usually like waking up, and has your routine changed since human malware? I've woken up far later, so 1 to 2 p.m. that's almost not waking up at all. Since human malware, is workflow affected in any way? When do you get up and start working, Tim?
I usually get up at 9 p.m.
Okay.
9 a.m. Not p.m. That would be ridiculous. So 9 a.m. is usually when I wake up, and I usually end up going to bed at maybe like 1 a.m. So it's fairly, but that's whether there's been human malware or not. That's fairly standard for me. I'm not a early riser or anything. Don't get up at like 5 a.m. to go to the gym or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I sort of start up, wake up, go to work immediately, and then after in sort of the evening time, I'll just do whatever after that and sort of have a block where I'm doing other stuff. So. Yeah, no real change to the routine for me. Has it changed much for you? We both work from home, so it's kind of similar.
That's right. It hasn't changed for me at all. My hours are similar to Tim's, just a bit earlier because I've got 2 young kids, so I'm usually up around 7, and then I try to be in bed by about 11 to midnight, but depending on what we've got, sometimes that, is much, much later. So mine's, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's that regular. I probably only have 2 or 3 nights a week where I sort of hit my target, get into bedtime. Other times it's like, you know how it can be. You end up wanting to do one more test or look at one more thing or, and then before you know it, 3 hours passed when you wanted to sort of get into bed. But to answer the question, no, the human malware situation has not changed my routine for the better or worse, just much the same. This next question's an interesting one. In the future, how do you think a third or more different CPU/GPU company will affect the gaming industry? And I'll just give you my 2 cents, Steve's 2 cents. I think it'll be a positive sort of effect on the industry because competition is always good. So we're sort of making the assumption that the third player will be competitive and even the second player for that matter. But yeah, if you have some good competition there, that competition breeds competition. It's obviously good for people buying these products because you don't get inflated prices and stagnation, all that sort of stuff. And I think the other benefit could potentially be we will see less sort of, what would you say, GameWorks type features, proprietary kind of stuff, because with 3 players, it'll be harder to sort of push your thing, especially if 3 players means that any one player has, less market share. So if it's spread a little more evenly, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it'd be an interesting situation where you'd almost get companies attempting more proprietary technologies because each of them would want to have like their own special features to sort of entice people into their ecosystem. But then each of those features would get less traction. So it'd kind of be like they're putting in more work to develop more stuff for less returns. Is sort of how I think of it.
Yeah, and I'm working under the assumption that it's not like NVIDIA owning 80% or whatever of the market and the other scraps left to the other 2. So a more competitive market, hopefully, we would end up with. And then, I think that would be the outcome there, where those technologies or features wouldn't really work out that well.
Yeah, I think a third GPU company is a lot more likely than a third CPU company. I know in this question they say CPU/GPU.
Yeah, in other words, Intel.
Yeah, I mean, the GPU thing sounds like, who knows when we'll actually get an Intel discrete GPU, but it sounds like they're actually working on one. Whereas, is there another company working on a true... I guess there's ARM. Maybe you could say that's a competitor, like different ARM brands, but who knows where that's going to go. We're still far too early to think of that as any sort of serious competitor, especially for high-performance computing, like we see for desktops. So, competition's always good. You don't want to reduce the amount of people doing stuff because then you get things like 2080 Ti's costing $1,200 with no competition. You don't want that. You want there to be all sorts of stuff at the high end and mid-range, all sorts of competition. It's always good. Do you think by the time they release X670 boards, they'll have figured out how to better passively cool the PCIe Gen 4 components, or will it still require an active cooling fan like the X570 boards?
That's an interesting one. Well, I think it's kind of surprising, I guess, that more of them aren't passively cooled. Have we still got just the one example with the Gigabyte Aorus Extreme?
I think so.
I think that's probably the only board, which is, again, surprising, especially for those higher end boards, because I'd say the only thing really stopping them from doing it is costs. Boards used to have heat pipes all over them, so it's kind of weird that we can't have one heat pipe connecting the chipset to the main heat sinks cooling the VRM components. So short of that, I mean, that's really the only solution that I'm aware of. It's the only one I've seen so far in practice. Yeah, interesting one. I mean, I did a bit of testing with some RAID 0 Gen 4 SSDs to see what the fan noise was like. And all the X570 boards I tested, it was completely non-issue. So yeah, I'm not sure who's seeing really loud fan noises there. The fan almost never spins, even when you're using, like, especially just a single PCIe 4.0 drive. So yeah, I'm not sure how much of an issue it is really. I hear a lot of people complaining about it, graphics cards covering fans, motherboards overheating, but I've not really seen that myself in my testing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've run into that.
Oh, I mean, in my X570 board that I'm using, I think the fan spins at like a very low RPM. Like, it's not really noticeable, so it's not really an issue for me. And I like a silent PC as well, so I would notice it. But I think, yeah, I guess the motherboard manufacturers could change the actual way they cool it, but I think more of the gains would happen on if they change the chipset, like if they actually modify it to be more efficient. It's a reused I/O die, isn't it, or something like that, is what they're currently using. So maybe if they switch it out for something else, maybe they'll change idle power consumption, and that's the issue. Who knows?
It's a cost saving thing. It's they're making it, as cost efficient as they possibly can. But for me, I just think it's a non-issue. Everyone makes a big deal out of these X570 fans, but unless I'm missing something, I haven't really seen it as an issue myself. And it sounds like you haven't either. And I've tried with multiple PCIe Gen 4 SSDs, as I've said, and not really had a problem with them. Okay, we're going to hit pause there. Thank you to everyone who asked questions, upvoted, did all that stuff. We've had a great batch of questions so far. Obviously, we have part 2 coming up with a fair few more. But yeah, part 1 done. That was a lot of fun as usual. And I don't know. What do you reckon, Tim? What do you think? I can't see Tim right now, but I know he's there.
Yeah, I'm somewhere right next to our monitor, Steve, which has been interesting to have you in this monitor form. So,
it's a bit more awkward. It's harder to engage and chat as much as we like to normally.
Looking quite slim in this region, which is good. So that's
I've been working on the mid area, the mid region.
That's right. So I think it's just all the usual stuff at this point. Just subscribing to see more of Monitor Steve. Signing up to our Patreon page. You can get our live streams, Discord chat, all that. We've also got I've got the Harbour Boxed merch, and I think you're repping the Harbour Boxed as well. So check that out if you're interested. Those are still going to be available up until I think it's Sunday of this week. Okay. So should be still good for a few more orders if you're interested. And
they'll be screen printed now as well, won't they?
Yeah. So that'll be nice, nice and high. So they'll
look a bit more vivid than what we're showing here. Because this was direct-to-garment printing.
Yeah, that's right. Tim? Our samples are just the standard sort of DTG printing, but the final versions will be screen printed, so that'll be pretty nice, I reckon. And I guess that's it. So who are you, Steve, these days?
Monitor Steve is
nice.
The official name. So social distancing Monitor Steve.
Yep.
Over and out.
All right. We'll see you in the next one. Yeah.
Thanks for watching.